Unitarian Universalist Coastside Community Sunday Service. Together with Bill Hebner, Dave Rudiger, David Joanna Kowski, and Tom Devine, I'm Laurel Fishman, and I will be your lead worship associate for today's diverse service. Here we celebrate diversity. Like all Unitarian Universalist congregations, we advocate for LGBTQ rights, reproductive rights, civil rights, affordable housing, democracy, vaccine wisdom, and climate justice as we work together to promote justice and repair the world. For this congregation, the September theme is diversity. To that end, today we warmly welcome back Ron Ahnen to the UUCC pulpit. Ron's sermon honors civil rights leader John Lewis. In particular, Ron dives deep into Lewis's exhortations to cause good trouble, what that means for our justice activism and our spiritual development. He incorporates passages from Ibram X. Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. Ron Ahnen graduated in May from Starr King School for the Ministry with his Master's of Divinity degree. In July, he completed a one-year internship with the First Unitarian Church of Albuquerque, New Mexico. A religious natural humanist, he is interested in interfaith dialogue and social justice action. Ron currently teaches at St. Mary's College of California in the areas of Latin American and development policies, international relations, the politics of mass incarceration, and international justice, human rights, and the ethics of war and peace. In the coming year, Ron is taking the final steps toward becoming an ordained UU minister and looks forward to part or full-time congregational ministry in the near future. Welcome back, Ron.
Thanks, and I have to say it is really, really good to be here this morning. So, good trouble. The late iconic civil rights leader, Congressman John Lewis, coined the phrase good trouble and made it famous. It seems kind of like an oxymoron, like two words that don't go together, right? But what Lewis was trying to say is that sometimes our behavior, our laws, our institutions, and our organizations are both very wrong, very unjust, and very entrenched. And the only way to start changing towards greater justice and towards the good is by shaking things up, sometimes shaking them up very significantly. And shaking things up very significantly sometimes looks like trouble, like getting beat up at a protest, like getting arrested, like getting hauled off to jail. Don't most of us think about getting hauled off to jail as being in trouble? You're in trouble, but it's good. It's good trouble. So this morning, I'm going to ask to focus on the spiritual growth that accompanies and undergirds and supports our good trouble actions. How can we grow in our mind and in our spirits in a way that not just to be not racist, but to be anti-racist? How can we examine our lives and reflect on them in order to be able to be better positioned to participate in good trouble that can spread love and justice everywhere?
And the opening hymn is number 95 in the Gray Hymnal, There Is More Love Somewhere. Now, this is an African-American spiritual from the era of slavery, so it conveys hope and determination amid injustice, and the lyrics promise, I'm going to keep on till I find it. So there's a lot of grief in this text, because if there's more love somewhere, there's not enough of it here, right? So I invite you, as you stand, when we start, Deidre's going to play it through first, and then we'll stand and start. But I invite you to channel your inner gospel singer as you sing this beautiful hymn.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Take it away.
Now it's time to light the chalice. This is a ritual that unites Unitarian Universalists. Indeed, it grew from the World War II era in sympathy with refugees seeking asylum, and in this sense speaks to today's moment. Due to fire regulations, this particular chalice glows from battery. And these particular words are from the Reverend Erica Hewitt. The title is To Be a Unitarian Universalist. Please join me in reading these words aloud. To be a Unitarian Universalist means we'll never be done with the work of telling the truth about oppression, the work of resisting any laws, policies, or practices that deny anyone their humanity, the work of stubbornly seeking out the spark of the divine in each other, no matter what the work of creating heaven on earth. To be a Unitarian Universalist also means we're not alone in the work. We are not alone because of our promises to love one another. We're not alone because we are companions on the journey. We grow ourselves into allies, helping one another get free, because none of us is truly free until we are all free.
This morning's reading features tweets from the late Representative John Lewis, March 2018. Sometimes you have to get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble, to make a way out of no way.
Your vote matters. If it didn't, why would some people keep trying to take it away?
October 2018. I have been beaten my skull fractured, and arrested more than 40 times, so that each and every person has the right to register and vote. Friends of mine gave their lives. Do your part. Get out there and vote like you've never voted before.
July 2017. I fought too long to end discrimination based on race and color, to allow discrimination based on gender identity to be considered acceptable.
July 2015. Even though I was arrested, I smiled for my photo because I was on the right side of history. Find a way to get in the way.
May 2020. 55 years ago today, we were beaten, tear-gassed, and trampled by horses. I thought I saw death. I don't know how I made it back, but I know we cannot rest. We cannot become weary. We must keep pushing and pulling and find a way to get in the way.
March 2020. We were beaten. We were tear-gassed. I thought I was going to die on this bridge. But somehow and some way, God Almighty helped me here. We cannot give up now. We cannot give in. We must keep the faith, keep our eyes on the prize.
And finally, in June 2018, this tweet. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble.
Well, good morning again, everyone. What a joy it is to be back here after my year-long ministerial internship in Albuquerque. I finished my work there at the end of July, and by mid-August, I was already on campus at St. Mary's College, ready to teach for the year, and that is such a gear shift, more than you might think. So actually being able to come here and preach is a way of sort of easing the transition a little bit, and I'm really grateful for the invitation, certainly grateful for working with Noreen and Bill, Laurel, and everyone else, worship leaders, musicians, song leaders. It's great to be here. You know, John Lewis passed away 5 years ago already, and as the tweet noted, he was arrested 40 different times in his life promoting justice and getting into good trouble. I'm embarrassed to admit that I have never been arrested. I mean, the closest I got was in 1998. I was down in Georgia. We were protesting U.S. military policy of training Latin American military officers, and we illegally went onto the base with our signs, and I was detained for an hour, but then expelled from the base. So no mugshot for me. I don't know if that actually counts as good trouble, maybe just good hot water or something like that. But anyways, a lot of you probably are already familiar with John Lewis and this notion of good trouble. So why do I need to bring it up now? I mean, what are you trying to do, Ron? Get these fine people arrested? Maybe. But as I noted in my opening words, today we want to focus on how our spirituality and the call of our Unitarian Universalist faith provide for our good trouble justice work. And I want to start by reading a principle that 225 of almost 1,000 Unitarian Universalist congregations, churches, and fellowships have adopted, and that's the 8th principle, and this is how it reads. We covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. Wow. That is quite a commitment. And yet, not all UUs were eager to adopt it when it was proposed, including folks at my home congregation, MDUUC in Walnut Creek. This was also true in Albuquerque. I remember that we were debating this passionately. I mean, nobody was really in favor of racism or oppression, but some of them, raised objections to the process. Some people thought that it was kind of top-down. Some didn't like the feel and the length of that 8th principle. It was just too long, didn't fit with the other 7. Some people liked the number 7 and just said, 8 principles is just one principle too far. Well, that 8th principle grew out of a General Assembly from 1992. Our national meeting, and what was passed was an action of immediate witness to affirm, and I'm going to quote, to affirm the vision of a racially diverse and multicultural Unitarian Universalism. So that was back in 92. 19 years later, the 8th principle was actually formally proposed by Reverend Paula Cole Jones and Professor Bruce Pollock Johnson. And then, of course, beyond the 225 churches that adopted it, the 8th principle is actually now incorporated with the 2024 UUA bylaw change to the purpose and values of the UUA, otherwise known as Article 2. So now all of us UUs that are affiliated congregations have adopted it in one sense or another. We UUs see ourselves as called by our faith to dismantle racism. But impressively, most congregations, not all congregations, who did adopt the principle realized that debating and discussing and finally voting to adopt was not the end of our anti-racist work. In fact, it was quite the opposite. It marked a new beginning, a new, more intentional phase of creating beloved community. So today, 33 years after that action of immediate witness, 12 years after formally proposing the principle, and a year after now adopting it in our bylaws, purpose of statement, I want to examine where we're at, individually and as a community, with our anti-racist work, sort of in kind of a doctor checkup mode. And I'm hoping that we can use John Lewis's idea of good trouble and his tweets, which were so beautifully read this morning, as our inspiration. However, our checkup is not really going to be on how much good trouble we've been in, how many protests we've attended, how many sit-ins, or how many arrests. I want you to journey with me on another challenging road, and that is the one of internal spiritual growth, the pathway towards and that grounds good trouble. Now, I'm not a doctor, and I'm kind of glad I'm not a doctor because many people like to avoid doctors, especially because doctors tell them things that they don't like to hear, like you should exercise more, or you should drink less alcohol, or cut down on sweets. And doctors also can ask you some questions at times that you feel a little uncomfortable answering with complete honesty. But some of my comments and questions today may make you feel a little uncomfortable. Talking about racism and anti-racism can be challenging. Of course, I realize in a room this small that we all have different levels of experience with both racism and anti-racism work. This could be really new for you, or this could be something that you've been working at for a long time. Either way, I hope that we can keep an open mind and learn something about ourselves and each other as we strive to fulfill our anti-racist and anti-oppression commons. So where are we? Well, let me start with an individual question for each of you, personal question, but please don't raise your hand. Are you a racist? See, I told you I'd start making you feel a little uncomfortable. You know, I suppose if I asked each one of you individually and separately, you would say that you're not a racist. And I bet that if I asked everybody in all the churches here in Half Moon Bay and all of the synagogues or mosques around the state of California and the nation, everybody would say they're not a racist. And you know what? I don't think folks are lying. In fact, I would say it's only a tiny, tiny minority of people who say that they are racist and truly are. So here's the puzzle. If nobody is racist, then why do our health and our promotion and our economic indicators show strong patterns of racism? Racism against black, against indigenous, against people of color, so-called BIPOC. Let's consider some statistics. We know that today, black women are twice as likely to die in childbirth than other women. Current black unemployment is 66% higher among blacks than whites. Blacks are 13% of the population. They have 12% of entry job. They have only 7% of managerial positions. They only have 4% of vice president positions, and they have 1% of president, CEO, Fortune 500 CEO positions. And these same disproportionate rates are similar for other non-white racial groups. We have to face our reality that as much as we don't want it to be, racism is operative somehow in our country. But according to Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, asking, are you racist, is actually the wrong question. According to Kendi, we should not focus on racist people, but on racist ideas, racist policies, and racist behavior. We need to not ask who is racist, but what is racist. Any idea, policy, or action that promotes racial inequality is racist. Any idea, policy, or action that promotes racial equality is anti-racist. He doesn't want us to focus on whether people are racist, because if we do, we will miss the opportunity to see how we may, at times, even the good people that we are, who detest racism, think and act in ways that can sometimes promote racial inequality. That is, we may miss seeing how we sometimes act in racist ways. Ouch. That feels troubling. We've come to the realization, sometimes when we come to the realization that we have said or done something that was racist, a host of negative emotions surface for us, like shame or guilt, embarrassment, sometimes frustration at ourselves or anger. But Kennedy says that we need to tamp down these negative emotions because they don't do us any good. If we realize that we made a mistake, let's just label it. Let's say, oh my gosh, that was racist. Let's make up for it, and then let's move on. Unintentionally saying or doing something racist is not good, but it doesn't make us evil people. Let's admit our mistakes and move on. And yet, the inner spiritual work of identifying those mistakes can feel troubling, but it's also good. It's a different kind of good trouble. Now, to prove his point, Kendi actually pointed out several instances in his own life even as the founding director of American University's Anti-Racist Research and Policy Center, in which he thought that he acted in racist ways. So this morning, I want to provide you a couple examples from my own life. These are moments of which I am not proud, but recognizing them for what they are was a vital step for me in my commitment to anti-racism and to the core values of my life. So does anybody like the game Jeopardy? Watch it on TV? All right. I love it. Watch it almost every night. And I'll never forget, a couple of years ago, I was watching, and the category was 18th century New England history. And there was a young black woman who was a contestant, and I remember she rang in to answer about a quote from George Washington. And my instant thought was, what the heck is she going to know about this? This is not her heritage. And within a second, I caught myself. That was really racist. And probably also sexist. And I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with myself. And of course, there's no reason why she wouldn't know just as much as the other contestants about that history. In fact, she knew more about it than I did. She got the answer right, and I had no clue. But why did I think that? Well, I have to admit that I am the product of many racist messages growing up in the U.S. And it's hard for me to root them all out of my head once and for all. Our racist culture still affects my thinking sometimes as much as I hate it. And I believe I can only change it if I become aware of it and admit it. I had a first-class lesson in becoming painfully aware and admitting my unconscious racial bias about a decade ago when I first took Harvard's unconscious racial bias test online. They have a test where you have to pair certain words with faces. And what it showed was that I had a moderate bias in favor of whites. And I was like, what? This is ridiculous. This is BS. This is not right. I didn't do it right. I didn't pay attention. And what I did is I took it again right away. But this time I was like, I'm paying closer attention. I'm going to do this right. And I got the same result. And in that moment, I had to realize, I had to accept that unconscious racial bias was a part of how my brain worked, as much as I don't want it to be there. Another example is about 6 years ago when, as chair of my department, we were trying to hire someone for a position in American politics. And I sent out advertisements, as chair is what you do, sent out advertisements to the usual national and regional associations of political scientists, whose members, by the way, are largely white and male. But my dean pointed out to me something that I didn't know, and that there exists an association of black political scientists. So I sent the advertisement there. I was actually curious about them. I went onto their website. They have bios. I read through some of the bios, and I found this woman who looked pretty good for our job, and I noticed that she had not applied. So I actually emailed her, and I said, hey, we got a position that I think you might be good for. You should apply. Well, she competed very well. In fact, she got the job. And now, today, she's a tenured professor at St. Mary's College. So by limiting my advertising to the usual associations, initially I was limiting the candidate pool to concentrate white candidates. I was promoting racial inequality. I was acting in racist ways. I was being racist, but I didn't know it. However, when I followed the advice of my dean and I broadened our candidate pool and I encouraged the candidate to apply, I was actually promoting racial equality. And I was acting in an anti-racist way. I was being anti-racist. So here's the challenge. Can you reflect on your life and identify moments in which you may have thought or said things or acted in racist ways? And can you identify moments when you were able to grow from that and to learn from that, to become more aware of how racism may have been operating for you? It's not fun to think about, might not be comfortable, but I really think that taking the time and having the courage to examine our lives in the most authentic manner possible is the only way that we're going to have a chance of overcoming unconscious racial bias. Now I want to shift a little bit from the individual focus and ask, how are we doing as a community in our anti-racist work? Y'all remember the quarterback Colin Kaepernick, San Francisco 49er quarterback? He's a talented black quarterback who in 2016 started to kneel during the national anthem before football games to bring attention to the issue of police brutality, especially against blacks. That's good trouble. Well, soon he lost his job and no one else hired him. But a lot of other players were weighing in on the controversy, should he kneel or not? And the quarterback from my home team, Green Bay Packers, was Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron actually came out in favor, and he said he supported Kaepernick's decision to kneel because, quote, they have a battle for racial equality. That's what they're trying to get a conversation started around. Now, as much as I love Aaron Rodgers on the field, I think his answer was totally wrong. I mean, I think we need to support Kaepernick. But as long as we, as a community, and especially as white people in the community, see racism as their problem, see racism as a BIPOC problem and not a white problem, we're never going to be able to dismantle it. We have to own this challenge collectively, especially white people, because more often than not, we do not feel, sometimes we don't even see racism's pernicious effects, because we're swimming in this water of white supremacy culture with its unearned and unjustified benefits for white people, so-called white privilege. So as a community doing anti-racist work, how is UUCC doing? How is Half Moon Bay doing? Well, like I said, I'm not a doctor. That's not for me to decide. But what I can say is that we need to keep focusing on dismantling racism and being inclusive. Reforming Article 2, putting up Black Lives Matter banners on our front lawn and doorways, these are starting points, not end points. Okay? We need to inject new energy always and find ways to support the values that those changes and those banners express. I want to add just a note here to say that self-examination of how we might unconsciously participate in white supremacy culture is not the only tool to dismantling racism, although I think it's an important one. Our government policies and programs function in ways that are racist. That is, they either help to further or to sustain racial inequality. Structural racism is real and must also be considered in our wider efforts. It's not all just about individuals. So let me end with one final comment about good trouble. With the current administration's penchant for attacking critical race theory, repealing DEI policies, and cutting public funding to certain universities and organizations, push is coming to shove. Like Harvard University and other universities and organizations, they're going to have to decide when and how to take a position against censorship, not allowing what is taught in Massachusetts to be determined from the Oval Office. More and more opportunities for that John Lewis type of good trouble are quickly forming all around us. But still, even as we put those protests on our calendars and we get ready to hit the pavement, let's not forget to attend to our own spiritual development in this work as well. Let's not be afraid of the good trouble of self-critical analysis and repair so that we can make progress towards healing and inclusion. Because I believe that if we have the courage to embrace this internal path with enough good trouble, we will create the beloved community that our hearts so fervently desire. May it be so. And now Dietrich is going to play The Chrysanthemum, an Afro-American intermezzo composed by the renowned African-American ragtime artist Scott Joplin. Prior to his death in 1917, Joplin's last words were, "Boy, when I'm dead 25 years, people are going to begin to recognize me." Well, he was off by 25 years. His music was rediscovered, made popular in the 70s, and culminated in a posthumous Pulitzer Prize in 1976.
And just to bring you all to the edge of your seats with excitement, very shortly, I, on behalf of UU Coastside, will ask for some financial support. But first we're passing out some cards. Cards hinting at gratitude and organization. There's likely enough for everyone to take a couple, because just between you and me, I sit at that desk and I count people. Okay. Cards that you can, in turn, share with others, pouring more gratitude into the world, or or you may keep them as part of a well-organized, good troublemaking lifestyle. There's a little secret about Ron's sermon. A moderator on Nextdoor thought it was too, I don't know, bullying or religious to qualify for Nextdoor's main thread. So if you're up for making a little good trouble, donating to the UUCC mission is one way to amplify his message. We do have a YouTube channel. We post links. We lure them in with music, and we hug them close with the words of Ron. Let's ponder the concepts behind these cards to express a little gratitude, to unclutter a little of your life, to attend to your own spiritual growth, to pour a little more love into the world. And we need your help doing the pouring. And speaking of love, while collections take place, Vera plays her own soulful arrangement of Sunburst by Andrew York.
love this, where we give someone who is well-deserving, one of our pre-interns who reached the end of their journey, so to say, we give them a stole. So, Ron, 3 years ago, you first came to our attention in the November Remembrance Service. There, you shared the devastating experience of losing your 7-year-old sister in the most unspeakable way. When you were just 8 years old. Recalling the loss of your parents and peers, you guided us through your grief journey as you moved from sadness and loss to remembering and cherishing the memories of the departed. You reminded us that grief might eventually give way to joy. At UU Coastside, you have now delivered a total of 6 sermons. Each has been powerful and enlightening with a polished delivery. We are honored to have participated in this journey to your becoming a fully vested Unitarian Universalist minister. And this stole honors your sister Rosie's brief life and reminds us all to continue fighting against all injustices. And I have a few more things to say, but I'm going to take out the stole now. We at UU Coastside honor that part of you that always fights for equality, social justice, and fairness. At UU Coastside, we value that part of you that encourages others to pursue personal growth, which may also take the form of a spiritual journey. On behalf of the entire UU Coastside community, we present this stole to you. It was fabricated in Bath, England. It's custom made. It features the rose emblem. It's a hand-embroidered rose, a symbol of social democracy. And for you, from you, and always something more. Thank you.
This is really special. I don't think that I have words that can express what I'm feeling right now. I can tell you this, when I got to Albuquerque to do my internship, Albuquerque is a huge church, 770 members. We have 2 services. The larger one of those at 11 o'clock, it has over 400 people sometime that you'd be preaching to. There was no way that I would have been ready to do that had I not had my experiences here first. And my supervisor there told me that they always had interns because as a large UU church with the financial resources and with the ministerial staff, they feel that they have a specific role to play and like an obligation to help to foster the development of new interns. Well, I can tell you that you people sitting here have also a very clear role that you are playing in fostering UU ministry. It's not about offering an internship with a big stipend for an entire year. It's about providing opportunities and encouraging people and suffering through my first sermons, which I don't think are some of my best things. Maybe, the first time you do something is usually not your best thing. But I just am so grateful for the opportunity to have come here and to be here. And I certainly look forward to coming back a few more times as I continue my journey towards ordained ministry. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Ron. This morning's closing hymn is number 1014 in your teal hymnals, and you'll have to use the hymnal because unusually, this time the words did not make it into your order of service. Now, there's a little trick to that too, because after the hymn was written, the composer, Jason Shelton, changed the title because it was called Standing on the Side of Love, which is the words you'll find in your hymnal. And he heard from a lot of disabled people that the song was somehow offensive to them because they were incapable of standing. In any case, he changed the title to Answering the Call of Love, which scans just as well with the music. So, you'll have to be careful when you start singing, but I'm going to sing the first verse by myself to refresh everybody's memory. We've sung this before, but it's been a while. And then everyone can join in on the chorus and the following verses. Diedrich will play just an introduction, and then I will start singing.
Benediction, I use again the words from John Lewis. Do not get lost in the sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some good noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. May we answer the call of love in our mind and in our hearts and in our actions. And may we always have the courage to challenge ourselves and each other to promote racial equality in all that we do and say. Go in peace and practice radical love.